Now, company, when they were annexing these territories, they were now very, very sure and very absolute of their power. They were very sure of their military power, and they were very sure of the capability, their capability to rule these annexed kingdoms. So, what they claim was the claim to paramountcy. What do you mean by paramountcy? Is now I am the superior ruler, and you have to be submissive. You have to be below me. My claim, my claim to annex these territories, my reason to annex these territories and administering upon them, have the authority of these kingdom is paramount. You cannot question us. So from the early 19th century, an aggressive policy of territorial expansion began. Now, initially the English were just eager to expand their trade in some way. They just wanted a trade expansion. But now, after tasting that what actual power of authority and dominion looks like, now they just wanted to claim more and more territories in their hand. Now they just wanted to annex more and more territories of India under their control. Under Lord Hastings, who was the Governor General from 1813 to 23, a new policy of paramountcy was initiated by the English East India Company. Now, the company, they were claiming that their authority was paramount. The authority was supreme from any of the rulers or any of the Nawabs. This helped them justify annexing of any Indian kingdom. Now, if you're claiming that you have the paramount power, you have the supreme authority, none of the rulers are in position to, question your authority or question that why are you annexing the states. Now you have a reason to justify that you are annexing the states because you have that power, you have that capability to annex the states and to claim the paramount power, to claim the paramount superiority and authority over those states. So that is what the English East India Company did. They claimed paramountcy. Of course, some of the rulers, they did not take it well. They were not ready to accept this claim of paramountcy. One of them was Queen of Kittur. Now, when the British, they tried to annex a small state of Kittur, which was in the state of Karnataka, Rani Channamma, she was a very brave and powerful lady. She took to arms and led an anti-British movement in her state. She was a very powerful lady, and she mobilized all of her people. She mobilized all of her army and fought the battle with the British. She was arrested in 1824. Of course, it was a very small state, and now the Britishers, they were getting very stronger day by day because, of course, they had annexed all the neighboring territories. So Rani Channamma had a very small chance to win this battle, but she tried her best. Of course, she was arrested after she lost the battle in 1824, and she died in prison, unfortunately, in 1829. Now, Rayana, who was the Chaukidar of Sangoli in Kittur, he was a Chaukidar. He carried this resistance even after Rani Channamma was caught by the English East India Company. But he also could not succeed on his own, and he was also caught and hanged by the Britishers in 1830. The threat of Russia. Now, if you are controlling a lot of territory under you, if you are controlling these territory on a foreign state, of course, you'll face opposition. You'll face a lot of resistance from the neighboring areas. So neighboring areas were not just the territory of India and the local rulers and Nawabs of India, but the English East India Company, they also had this threat from Russia. What kind of threat they supposed they were having? So in the late 1830s, the English East India Company became worried about Russia. They were very worried about the intentions of Russia, and they were very worried about how Russia was looking upon their annexing of the territories. The thought should not come to Russia that, okay, we should also annex the territories of India. It imagined that Russia might expand across the Asia and enter India from the northwest. So they were very, very suspicious of the intentions of Russia, that Russia, whenever they want, they might, try to expand their territory through the northwest border of the India. Now, they were very, very driven by this fear, and now they wanted to secure their boundaries. They wanted to secure their boundaries from the northwest, where they had this fear. They fought a prolonged war with Afghanistan between 1838 and 1842 and established indirect company rule there. So now they did not want to claim their authoritative and administrative control over state of Afghanistan because, of course, it was very far away and they could not, have such a vast area under their reign. So they claimed an indirect rule in the state of Afghanistan. They had a long battle with Afghanistan, and in the end, they were able to install an indirect rule, and Sindh was taken over in 1843. So in this way, they tried to, subdue the threat of Russia. They tried to sideline the threat of Russia. Annexation of Punjab. Now Punjab was next. Of course, if you are going through Pakistan, you have to go through Punjab. So annexation of Punjab was another necessity to block the threat of Russia, to to assure yourselves to, that Russia might not come through the state of Punjab as well. So but the presence of Maharaja Ranjit Singh could not let the Britishers succeed in their intention to annex the Punjab, because Maharaja Ranjit Singh was again a very powerful and very able administrator. He was a very capable ruler who was protecting his territory like anything. So after his death in 1839, the English, they were not able to control and annex the state of Punjab until his death in 1839. Two prolonged wars were fought with the Sikh kingdom, and eventually the Sikh kingdom, they lost in 1849, and Punjab was also annexed within all the territories that was claimed by the British East India Company. There is another story that the male heir was not born at all. So basically, Rani of Jhansi, she got into a fight with the Britishers, she lost and she died. And after that, Jhansi was annexed by the Britishers as well. So basically, this doctrine of lapse, along with the subsidiary alliance policy that was there previously, this all helped Britishers annex the territories of India without getting into a battle actually. So these were all policy decisions that helped them annexing the territories without getting into an actual battle. Of course, there was battle when some of the rulers, they resisted to these policies. One of the example was the Rani of Jhansi. Annexation of Awadh. The British claimed that they were obliged by duty to take over Awadh in order to free the people from the misgovernance of the Nawab. Now, this was an allegation that the British people, the East India Company, were having on the Nawab of Awadh, that he was not administering his territory properly. He was misgoverning basically, and that is why it becomes a moral duty for the Britishers to annex that territory. Now, imagine you are just exploring all the ways you can, good or bad, to annex the territories that you can. You are trying to implement policies that are very unfair in its own nature. You're trying to annex territories by war, and now you're also alleging that there is misgovernance from the side of the Nawab. So basically, it enraged the people of Awadh, who chose to be a part of the First War of Independence, that is the 1857 revolt. This only provoked the people of Awadh to be a part of this. Begum of Awadh was also a part of a very, very able part of the First War of Independence. Now, setting up a new presidency. Warren Hastings, Governor General from 1773 to 1785, was one of the important figures in the expansion of the company power. How he expanded, let's see. British territories were broadly divided into administrative units called presidencies. Now, the British had already expanded their territory to a huge area. Now they wanted an able administration to that area, and their annexing of territories took a slow pace, and now they were more interested in administering whatever they had in a good way, in a way that was feasible to their needs. So three presidency units were set up in Bengal, Madras and Bombay. All three were ports, all three were great trading ports, and they were very, very important for the British territory. Each were ruled by a governor. So a governor was posted in all these three major territories of British, three presidencies of British. These were also called presidency towns, by the way. The supreme head of the administration was the Governor General. Now, these three presidency towns would have the governors, and the supreme of all these would be the Governor General, who will be the head of all the presidencies. The new system of justice was also coming into the picture. Now, Warren Hastings, who was the first Governor General of this annexed territory, introduced several administrative reforms. He was a very capable administrator, and he wanted to take the administration level very smoothly. Now, he ensured that there was some way that they could have come up with to, ensure a very stable and a healthy administration. From 1772, a new system of justice was established. How come? Each district was to have two courts, a civil court and a criminal court. A criminal court was called Faujdari Adalat, and a civil court was called a Diwani Adalat. Maulvis and Hindu Pandits interpreted Indian laws for the European district collectors, who presided over the civil courts. There were European district collectors only in the supreme form. Like they were only the people who were taking these who were taking over these justice administration. But they took help from the Maulvis as well as Hindu Pandits. So they wanted to form laws. They basically wanted to, segregate the laws of the Hindus and Muslim, and they called for the leaders, and they tried to, consolidate all the laws for the Hindus and Muslim by the help of their own people. So they consolidated the law by these people, and they tried to, make things go in the form of justice in their way only. The criminal courts were still under a Qazi and a Mufti, but under the supervision of the collectors. Now, the civil courts that were under the administration of the district collector that was appointed by the East India Company, he was an Englishman. But the criminal court still had a Qazi or a Mufti who was there in the charge. But all the decisions taken by these people were to go through the collectors again. Uniformity and regulation of laws. How they formed a regulation of laws. Now, Brahman Pandits gave different interpretation of laws. Of course, they came from different schools. They had a different interpretation of the Dharma Shastra. So basically, they gave different interpretation, different laws. The English, what they did was they consolidated all these laws. To bring about uniformity in 1775, 11 Pandits were asked to compile a digest of the Hindus' law. That is what a consolidation of law means. Basically, I would call each and every one of you. You would interpret laws in your own terms. You would give me those laws and I would consolidate it all. And I would, come with a common thing which is there in each and every one. N.B. Hall had translated this into an English digest. So justice could happen according to your laws. In 1778, a code of Muslim law was also prepared, compiled for the benefit of the European judges. So the European judges can now decipher and interpret and give decisions according to your customs and traditions. Regulating Act of 1773. New Supreme Court was established. A Code of Appeal, the Sadar Nizamat Adalat, was also set up at the Calcutta. Now, Calcutta was the judicial, basically a judicial establishment now. Now, it had the Supreme Court as well and the Court of Appeal. The collector and the collectorate. Collector, his main job was to collect revenue and taxes and maintain law and order in his district with the help of judges, police officers and darogas. Collector was always an Englishman, remember this. His main job was obviously to collect the revenues and taxes, and he was also accompanied with this job also accompanied that he was to maintain the law and order of the area he was in charge. His office, the collectorate, became the new center of power and patronage that steadily replaced previous holders of the authority. The previous holders such as zamindars or subedars, all these posts were abolished, and now this collector happened to be there having the supreme post. Not the supreme post exactly, the post of power and patronage. Military strength of the company. Colonial rule in India brought in some new ideas of administration and reform, but its power rested on its military strength. How? Because still now, half of the territories that you annexed, more than half of the territories actually, you fought because of your military strength. You won because of your military strength. So basically, it was very, very clear to the Britishers that if we want to stay in this place, any resistance could happen. So basically, we will have to have this military strength as a basis for our rule. We will have to maintain this military. So how the reforms and ideas could work in order to maintain that military? The Mughal army. The Mughal army was mainly composed of the cavalry and the infantry. They were trained in archery and use of the sword. The cavalry dominated the army, and the Mughal state did not feel the need to have large professionally trained infantry, because I told you that Mughals after Aurangzeb were very lax in their approach, they were not very keen on expanding any territory or not very keen on maintaining an army, and all the subedars and zamindars, they started forming their own army. So basically they were not very keen on supporting the rulers. So that happened, and they lost the professionally well-trained army. They did not see the need to maintain that kind of army. The rural areas had a large number of armed peasants, and the local zamindars often supplied Mughals with padal soldiers. Padal soldiers here means on-foot soldiers. So Mughal rulers often dependent on the local zamindars who would have their resources as the foot soldiers that they would provide with the Mughal rulers. But obviously Mughal rulers, they did not feel that they needed this. They did not see the East India Company as a threat. I don't know how.